Hi, everyone. Billy Trasio and Chad Burton here with Modern Law Practice. And today we are going to tackle the topic of accountability. How are you doing today, Billy?
I am doing good. How are you?
Good, good. Before we dive in, you had a little event at your retail shop this past weekend, huh?
I did. I am so glad you asked about that. So I have been talking to you all about how I think I've told you all that the Santan, retail space locations not going well at all. I think I've told you all that. Well, we had our first pro bono day this last Saturday, and the goal was to at least get positive reviews about it, for our location, because every single Google My Business location, you need your own reviews. So we really wanted to walk away with 2 to 3 positive reviews. That was the goal. We walked away with almost 10 clients
Lots of pro bono, huh?
and
Wait,
6 new Google reviews. So it was
good. So it went well. So you're feeling different about this whole retail thing now.
I feel like it's just such a great point of why you need to go into experiments with curiosity and not conviction, because this space
Right.
does not work the same way the law office worked, but it was fantastic for events. And so now we're thinking, oh, we should probably think about using this for events. And had we spent a lot of money retrofitting and designing this space to work just like the law office, it would have been an even bigger waste of the money that I have so far wasted.
Right. And this will allow you to kind of focus in as opposed to expecting like the Lululemon down this, road or whatever it is. Like you're not going to have the walk-ins, which makes sense, I think. That perhaps were expected from a retail experience, but that's okay. But you can drive it by events and otherwise. And you have people that are working out of there, so it is kind of like it's just another location for humans to be stationed as well.
Right. Yeah. I also limited the hours. So I've got some flexibility with the landlord, I guess is what we would call them, the property management
That
company
is
for the
usually what they're
mall.
called. Yeah.
Well, but in this case, it's a little different. So like the medical facility next to me is closed on Sunday. So I just asked them if we could close on Sunday because it doesn't make sense to stay open. And they said, sure. So limiting the amount of out of office, beyond office hours manning is also a good thing.
So just for reference, like what hours could somebody walk in and get help announced?
10 to 7, Monday through Friday,
Okay.
and
Is
Saturday
that
and
are those
Sunday,
normal mall hours?
slightly less,
Okay.
but it's still, starts, the mall opens at 10. And then I think they might open or close at 8 or 9, but
You kind of have like COVID hours, a little shorter,
yeah,
just a little
right. A
shorter.
lot of people have COVID hours at the mall and everywhere else. And then in addition to Saturday and Sundays 10 to 2.
Got it. Okay, but not Sundays anymore. So
Not
okay.
Sundays anymore. And so pro bono day was at 10 o'clock this Saturday, and there was literally a line out the door. It was so exciting because the space has been dead. And it was a blast. It was a blast. And I mean, there were very few people there for pro bono. Most people were there because they thought it was a cool thing and they wanted to hire us and and many of them had consultation scheduled for the week afterwards, but decided to come to pro bono day anyway, and they just signed up early.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so yeah, let's give
Yeah.
that some context because the idea of pro bono day makes it sound like it's an extension of legal aid.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, where bar associations will have an event where you can show up, get free help, people volunteer. This was just your firm, and like you
Mhm.
said, people that were. So, what did you offer? What is the pro bono that was offered
We had like 4 attorneys or so there, just attorneys on demand. Come in and you can talk to an attorney.
for whatever amount of time, half hour,
Yeah,
something
we
like that?
weren't really structured with the timing, and there's things I would do different. The other thing is, usually when you do pro bono, you don't have to conflict check in advance. but we learned that we need to, because this is not like a state bar thing or
Right.
it's just not. It's an introduction to modern law. So we are going to have to change our system a little bit and make sure to conflict check first.
Really, it's free consultation day is what that doesn't have the same ring as like pro bono
And it
day.
kind of is, though. I mean, I did help people who would never ever be able to afford our services fill out, self-help documents and
Right.
point them in the right direction. And that is a completely and totally like valid use of pro bono day.
Right. But it's just interesting that like, you can frame it one way and the intent was not, well, I mean, you weren't expecting based on setup that people were going to be like signing up to hire you on site. That was an unexpected aspect of it. So but it's a good example of like how people are using that space from a client perspective, where that event or day specific feels more comfortable perhaps than walking in. It's not like they're looking to buy a Yankee candle or whatever malls sell. So it's perhaps more comfortable because it seems more focused.
Yeah, such an interesting experience. It's an event we put on social media. Many of the people who came had seen it on social media, either in a Facebook group or on TikTok or on Instagram. So yeah, I mean, that is an event that people are going to be more likely to share and talk about online, which will help.
Right.
Which will help generate, brand awareness and goodwill, and all in all, like pro bono day was a huge success.
Good. Cool. That's good. It's helpful. Look, you could, you had something positive to talk about with the retail space. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about accountability. So we wanted to dive into this concept of the challenges that law firm owners have from an accountability perspective, not only just like with themselves, but also with your team. And that comes in so many different flavors, whether you are a solo trying to grow your firm and keep yourself on track, to somebody that maybe has a single assistant to X number 30, 40 people. It all comes in different flavors. So in particular, kind of what from your perspective prompted this topic?
Well, I mean, I think we were discussing how big of a deal this is and how this really cannot be underestimated. Like, it's the reason that our clients hire us. Yes, they want ideas and they want solutions, but they also want structure. And I think accountability and structure cannot be divorced. Like, they go hand in hand. When there's no structure, it's very hard to be accountable. And so that could be in your firm. It could be for things like time tracking or getting out bills or whatever. It could be the most simple things. Like in my firm right now, for a good long time, I have been trying to put into place structures and requirements that strategic action memos go out to all the clients every time there's a change in plan. Because one of the biggest complaints from clients is there's nothing happening in my case, or I don't know what's going on in my case. So that's one issue, by having a memo that is always going out that says, here's the plan and they've signed off on it, we eliminate that problem. The other thing is with COVID and with like right now I have one lawyer out on paternity leave and we're covering for him. Like, it's so much easier for a lawyer to cover another lawyer if you've got a standing memo that says the facts, the legal issues, the strategy, strengths, weaknesses, how we're tackling it. But getting my people to do these is so hard.
Right. And what do you think? What's the hang up? Do you think it's that it is just a pain to do? Is it it takes too much time? What do you think is the actual hang up?
Well, so that is such a good question. So this is, in my opinion, one of the highest value things we can bring to our clients. It's absolutely billable work. it turns into more billable work when you determine where your holes are, and then you go research them, and then you like, it simply, it makes you such a better lawyer, both in terms of lawyering and in terms of client communication and deliverables to the client. So like, if everybody knows that, why is it not happening? There's no structure for it. There's no pattern. There's no habit.
But it's not something that, I mean, there's a pattern to it, but it's not something that happens regularly throughout a case. It could change every week in some, and some it could remain the same the entire time.
Right. But lawyers are almost entirely deadline driven and
Right.
calendar driven. So if it is not on the calendar, and if it's not a deadline, and if it's not a phone call or an email, like, I think people just don't get around to doing it. And so I, as a boss, have to put a deadline or a calendar or a consequence, a structure in place that holds them and me accountable to make sure that this happens.
What's the consequence if they don't do it? Grounded?
So far, nothing.
Nothing.
And this is just,
Is that the problem?
Yeah, that's the problem with all of us, right? Like it's the same thing with our, I always say this, but like, having employees and being a parent is just not that different. You do a great job, you stay really on it, you make sure that they do X, Y, and Z every single day. And then the moment you kind of like back off, over time, if you wait long enough, it all gets messy. And it's the same thing is true with your law firm. And then, like we're hiring like 4 or 5 people in the last month. And then it's even more important that you have a structure going on, because
Right.
you want your new people part of the structure. So there's a lot of catch up to do. That's one issue. We got to catch up with the 300 cases we have. And then we have to come up with a structure of regularity and accountability moving forward. So for the catch up, what I did was I made a spreadsheet of each, on the tab is each lawyer and all their cases. And then in my one-on-ones, like I just had a one-on-one with somebody and I said, listen, like, this is what I want you to do this week. And she agreed it's super important. Like everybody's kind of excited about it. And that's the thing with accountability. It's kind of like when you enter your New Year's resolution or you get a personal trainer and you're like, yes, I feel so good about this. That's how the firm feels about these strategic action memos. Like they want to do them, but I've now given a deadline. I've set up a 90-minute meeting to go over them with this person. And I guess I'll let you know if it works.
Right. When's that meeting? So we can
a week from now. I mean,
okay.
So, but I have to do it with every attorney. So
right. So it's going to be ongoing, and some will do it and some won't. Is the structure of your memo thing, is it something that is the proper, like the right amount of information you're trying to seek? Is it have a certain format to it? Is it too burdensome on people that when they look at it, they say, F it, I'm not doing it?
We haven't figured out a great format. And so that has been a fabulous excuse for not doing it. Because, what I started saying at our last retreat, which I think was a month ago, is like, I don't care what you call it. I don't care what the format is. Like, we'll figure that out later. Like, write it down. Write it down. Write down what the plan is, what the strengths are, what the weaknesses are, what the strategy is, the to-dos, how much it's going to cost. Just write it down. And then if you meet with a client and something changes or they want to change, write it down. I don't care if it's an email that you then copy and paste into a box note. I don't care. Like, it is so much more important that you do it than you wait for the format. So this is kind of like, again, if we talk about working out, this is the difference between being like, well, I don't have the right equipment, so I can't work out, or I don't know how to cook, so I'm not going to eat fruits and vegetables. Like, it's a bullshit excuse.
Right. What could be a fun format, as you were talking about it, is like an online form, like a type form or a jot form, that a link exists and you have like 5 points that they just enter in, and then you're going to be able to track. You have a kind of fun data tracking tool at that point, because you'll see how often
that idea has been floated. That idea has been floated.
Yeah, be interested in the test, but maybe give 20 people. That one's on me. You can have that.
I mean, honestly, I don't love that idea because of a couple of things. First of all, it means every time that you go to update it, you have to re-insert information because you have to refill out the client, the facts, the changes, as opposed
you
to.
you could get around that, but that's okay. That's a different issue. Yeah, I know.
And then how do I get that into the file or the folder? And then how does it get emailed to the client? So, I mean, I don't know that it's just not a formatting issue for me.
Right. I understand. I was just giving you a format. You could use Airtable, but that would solve all those. But
you're like, I need these weights. They got to be the best weights, and then I'll lift weights.
Right. Like the weights I'm looking at behind my computer, they're good.
And I'm like, do a fucking push-up.
Right. Exactly. Options. All right. So I think the strategy memo is a good example there. I think that's kind of can go broader in the sense that anytime, like, a lot of accountability gets fixed with some kind of structure, process, procedure, like you said, whether or it's a deadline or just if somebody feels lost and doesn't know what to do, just having even like a basic task list for them. This happens often with people with like an assistant or a paralegal who may not be performing like they expect. And when you really get down to it and then talk with everybody, oftentimes, what is being framed as somebody who's, sucky at their job is really, they don't know what their job is. It hasn't been communicated in a way, or they don't know, like, every time they go to do something, they're not really sure what to do with it. And so it's not done to the expectation of the attorney, and then everything unravels. But it's not the real issue is just, it's a communication and a structure deal to be able to have that accountability.
Well, yeah. So let's talk about that for a minute. So this will work. Me being all fired up and sort of like talking to them about it and setting deadlines for them will completely work. But the reason this is not a sustainable model is because it cannot be dependent upon the lawyer in charge caring and then making it a priority. So this will work to get caught up. People like it, they're fine with it. But on an ongoing basis, there has to be a structure that does not require me being upset.
Right. Because you'll forget about it. Because then you'll be like, I'm doing a once a week
move on to the next thing.
I'm doing pro bono day every day of the week now. We're calling it so much. So I forget about strategy memos. So to take this, it's like, okay, now figuring out the next step is once you're done being fired up and you've got everybody caught up, how are you going to make sure it happens on a regular basis? What is the carrot or the stick? Is it excluded from bonus consideration?
I think so. I think you might not be bonus eligible. So we do have quarterly audits. Where my office manager quarterly is setting up a meeting for, substantive feedback. How are you doing? What are you working on? Like, what are your goals and hopes and dreams? And how can I help you? And this is what you need to improve on, or this is what's going well. And part of that is going to be, do you have your memos done? Do you have your cases closed? And if you don't, I mean, there's got to be a certain level of grace, but if you don't have something like a 90%, you will not be bonus eligible. That's a lot of money. It's like $2,500 a quarter for an attorney. Like, is that worth it? Plus shame.
Plus you remembering once a quarter to get fired up about it. That'd be good. Yeah. Well, and I would assume that if people are actually doing these things, the output from those memos, the idea of that strategy may not be being executed in full now because it gets lost in the shuffle. That great idea that the client bought into that will likely cost more money is not being done because it's forgotten about and not documented.
Yeah. Or the client says, why am I having to repeat myself? I know you guys hear this within your law firms.
Right.
Why am I having to say this again? I already gave you this document. You should already have that. Woo! I hate those conversations. Like when that gets back to me from a client, it truly means like we're like everybody else. Like that's just mediocrity, and it's not okay.
Then you get fired up. So yeah, so the takeaway from this is everybody's going to have it may not be client memos, right? Or strategy memos. It's some other form of something that
Time tracking.
Time tracking is often one that people struggle with, even though that's how you make money usually.
Right. Right.
But it's a pain. And if it's not a habit, if it's not that reflex, then it gets lost in the shuffle. Some people don't get out invoices in a timely fashion. And then all of a sudden it's, the end of the next month and you're like, oh, I don't want to knock them out with 2 invoices, at once. That's too much money. So then now you're losing like a month's worth of pay effectively. So getting these, things that are key to running your firm well and getting your people to perform, getting you to perform, getting your clients to perform and be happy are so important.
So can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Obviously, I control these people's jobs, their pay, their bonus eligibility. I have a lot of carrots and sticks. You as a consultant working directly with law firms have a different relationship.
Correct.
So how is it that you can provide accountability? Because I'm assuming you can't go in there and be all fired up.
No, I mean, sometimes, oddly enough, because if somebody feels bad that they're not doing stuff, they'll, almost want a little bit of shame, not like to the extent of Roman and Succession wanting shame, not like that, but like just a little bit of like, oh, I must be a crappy client type, and I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. And from there, it just drives the conversation of, and oftentimes it just steps up the game of what we're working on, because most people know that if they have more structure, including entrepreneurial lawyer business owners, more structure will help them get done what they want. They came to us for a reason. They came to us because they want something to change in the firm. It is likely, wanting to work on client files less and work on the business more, be able to focus more on marketing and growth. Take your pick, or just growing in general. And, from a solo to wanting to have, a massive firm. And so, but getting there is the hard part, because you have to execute, and that's the execution part of it. And so the way we do it is, weekly meetings. Those are huge. And then, that way we can check in to make sure everybody's doing what needs to be done. Doing a lot of structured implementations within the firm, looking at things like the accountability chart idea of who's responsible for what. And it's really eye-opening. You and I just had a conversation about this, that I think it's, when you think about, when you're looking at like an accountability chart, like it's your leadership team. What does that mean? And you and I had a conversation, I don't know, when was it? Last week sometime, because I walked into your office and I said, who's your leadership team? You start writing things down and you start charting it, like the accountability chart. And then you come back and what was your end result? Who's your leadership team?
Well, I started the conversation with saying, this is the problem. I don't have a leadership team.
Right.
And I think I've told you all before, like when we started EOS, we were 6 people until everybody has come along and everybody goes to retreats and everybody gets to contribute. And now we're 25 people and I don't have a leadership team.
Right. And that's not unusual. And it's not necessarily, you do have one, but it's more like ad hoc and more of and I think with smaller businesses, like the people that you wrote down on this, some of these people that it's almost kind of, I would say even aspirational, that if they work out like they should and what they're demonstrating so far, these are future people that you're going to lean on for lots of things. And you're going to have change and turnover on things. You're going to experiment with certain people in leadership roles that just don't work. And that's okay. We've talked about the managing attorney idea quite a bit, and the struggles with that. You've gone through different iterations, working with firms on different iterations of it. It's just a big challenge, but that's where you as a law firm owner are saying, I want to trust this person so much that they are effectively going to take over my role in managing X part of the firm. That's a big thing. And oftentimes that it can't come to fruition like you hope it will, because that person doesn't live up to what you're expecting them to do. And it becomes this balance of, okay, I trust this person so much to do this, and I think they have the skill set. I don't want to micromanage it too much, because then I feel like I'm taking away from the leadership-y feel of it. But then when they don't perform like you expect them to, then you swing back to wanting to micromanage it, and eventually it just doesn't work. And so in going through this, and we're doing this currently with several firms, where what ends up happening is the conceptual managing role gets shrunk down a lot, and it becomes more narrow, because the issue that's trying to be solved is way more narrow than initially thought up front, which is pretty fascinating. And it's a little different in every firm. Like there is a turnover issue, and that person was brought in to really kind of hone in and try to focus in on different recruiting, perhaps, and then different management, and figuring out what those issues were. You're talking about a concept of structure and strategy. Everybody's got a different flavor for what needs to happen. That's it. Now you're speechless. Now you're thinking about strategy memos some more, is my guess.
Well, I mean, one of the things you said, I think, is worth commenting on, which is like
this one thing, though.
Yeah, that's the thing. That is the thing. The thing is, and this is from EOS as well, you take your issue, whatever it is, and then you have to drill it down, drill it and drill it and drill it, and discuss and discuss, and be curious, and find the one thing that you want to focus on fixing, and let everything else go until you fix the one thing. Or, and so this is rocks, and maybe it's two things or whatever, but this should be, you are better off drilling down to find the one thing, as opposed to trying to do everything at once.
Right. And it's oftentimes that prioritization is difficult, because and we see this too, when people come to us out of the gate, say, I'm trying to solve whatever problem. Thinking of one recently where the engagement started where the perceived issue was intake. Actually, we're not touching intake at all anymore. I mean, little bits of like tweaking Clio Grow and things like that, but like intake is not the issue at all. But it felt like it, because it like that was a pain point on that particular day. So the interesting thing from this conversation is, is the actual issue strategy memos, or is it something else more deeper that is kind of going on underneath it? It's an important thing to be fixed, obviously, but and you do this on a regular basis, so I'm not saying it's not, because I don't know, but like it feels to me kind of like the intake type issue, or we need new tech, we need new process. Is it a deeper issue than just strategy memos that has to be really honed in on and explored, that is not a, uncover it in a quick chat kind of scenario? But is there something else? I don't know.
I don't know either. I mean, we have been talking about this specific issue for a long time, and the strategy memo was the solution to the big problem of, how do we become more excellent? In March of 2020, when the world shut down, I was pretty sure that the middle class would shrink. I was wrong, but whatever. The middle class would shrink. There would be more people who could not afford legal services, and there would be fewer people in that upper echelon. And I really wanted us to be able to be excellent and compete at that upper echelon. And so part of being excellent is doing really good legal work. So that was one thing, that led to wanting the strategy memo. And then the other thing is, like, we asked for client feedback a lot. We have a client service specialist or client advocate that asks how we're doing throughout the case. We have people that ask for NPS at the end. We have experienced pretty explosive growth. With that has come some sloppiness and bad feedback. These two issues together sort of came into the strategy memo concept. So I don't know.
Right.
If I'm missing
but the good thing is, now that you're doing the memos, if it hasn't been done, and so something from March 2020, so from a year and a half ago, that is, now being implemented, at least for a first round, right?
Well, and I'm not saying that nobody ever did any of them, but
enough that
300 cases
we're
and
talking
not
about
enough
it.
strategy memos.
We're
Yeah.
not talking about somebody that forgot to check off a task. We're talking about like an issue that you're, setting log meetings for, and you've made a spreadsheet with multiple tabs. It's a big.
I made the spreadsheet.
Yeah,
Do you want to know why I made the spreadsheet? Because the office manager is onboarding 3 people this week and did 2 people last week, and we're experiencing explosive growth, and it's messy. And so maybe, I don't know if that should be another podcast episode, but explosive growth is messy.
Right. That's to finish up the other part, is that a year and a half to implement. It's happening now. What you can do is look at, all right, August 2021, however many months after you start it, you have what was happening before and the feedback there, and you're going to have what's going to happen going forward, as long as the memos keep getting done. So you have a nice cutoff of looking at the data, whether it's in the form of NPS, whether it's in the form of average client spend, whatever it is. Cases getting resolved perhaps quicker because of different strategies being implemented in line with the client's needs. You're gonna have 2 different comparison timeframes, which will be super helpful to be able to tell, is this the solution to the issue?
Yep.
So that'll be fun. We'll have to wait a while to talk about that, because you have to do it for a while, but
it's got to be at least 6 months, at least.
Right. So we can circle back on that one.
Okay.
Cool. I think that's good.
All right.
Anything else before we sign off?
Nope.
Oh, I have been doing the Sandler training thing.
How's it going?
I like it. I was like, it's a very useful, intuitive, it fits into our world so much, including like the concept of consultations and intake. And for those of you who have been through some of our workshops before, this is that plus just, amped up on steroids more with systems and processes. So for me, it starts at 7:30 in the morning, which is not ideal for lots of reasons, but that's it's been worth it despite that. So it's been, so just thought I'd do a little bit of a report on that.
Good.
Cool. All right. Well, have a good day. Thank you all for joining us.
Bye.